Check the mic and make sure it sounds
So
right,
welcome
boy.
everyone to the group chat brought to you by Overmark. I'm your host Darrell, and today with us, your co-host Xin Wei. What's up, Xin Wei?
Hello.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about a very practical topic on building your portfolio. So how do you do it? Why should you do it? What to avoid? And how do you develop the best portfolio that will suit yourself? So let's start off straight and jump into the topic. So why is it important to build your portfolio? So your portfolio will largely contain things like your achievements, your awards and projects you have been in, or anything that you have like volunteered for. We'll go through the steps on how to build a solid portfolio. But the reason why you need this student portfolio is because if you're aiming to get scholarships, or if you're aiming to enter top university courses in Singapore, for example, for law or for medicine, they will be looking at your portfolio. And if you're looking to apply for overseas universities, this is one of the key considerations where they look at, because they don't just consider your grades, they will also look at your other relevant activities that you have taken part, especially in your schooling days. So building your portfolio is a very tedious and I think strategic process because it takes time. It's not something that you can say, oh, I want to build my portfolio today and you have it tomorrow. You actually have to plan ahead. So I hope that this podcast will give you a bit more insight on how to do so and to do it in the right way. Okay, Xin Wei, maybe just to throw it over to you,
Yes.
what is like a few advice that you would give on building a solid portfolio, and how do you do it for yourself?
I think just now you mentioned that this is a very strategic process, and I agree with that. I think I don't think I was so conscious and aware when I was a student. But I was lucky enough that I had enough to show. But I had friends who were super strategic. They know what course they want. I think not just strategic. I think there was definitely like interest, right? It will be very sad if you're doing it purely for portfolio, but have zero interest in the things that you're involved in. But I think one strategy is that if the course that you are going for is like really super competitive and like it's very hard, you can build a portfolio with a very recurring theme. Like let's say it is I have more uni example lah. But then I think in general it's like, let's say you want to go for medicine or law. There are certain things where it will help you a little bit more. Like not in the sense that it will help you to definitely get into medicine or to get into law, but you can build your story better. Like why am I interested in medicine? Because of this. I want to help people. I'm interested in human body. I'm interested in diseases. So what are the things that are related to those themes? Like I'm very helpful. I want to help people. Then maybe you are in Interact Club, you are in like all the volunteering project. If you are interested in the medical part, then maybe you take part in those like medical competition. Those like, you learn more than just your syllabus. You take part in those like conferences. You take extra biology society, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think it is. I don't want to make it sound like it's so planned and so curated and so like no feelings. I think all these, hopefully there should still be passion, there should be real interest, real enthusiasm in them. But I think if about the strategy part is having a recurring theme and then align with where you want to go.
Yeah, I think another way you can think of it is the general direction where you're heading. You kind of need to know, because you can't confirm that you are definitely into medicine or dentistry per se, but you kind of need to know who you are as a person and what areas you'll be interested in pursuing in the future. I think if there's another way to look at this, I think a good way is how do you showcase your personality, right? What is your story, for example? If you want to get into medicine and you feel your personal story is about helping people, then I think through the initiatives that you push out, or through the volunteer projects that you do, or even your CCA work scope itself, you need to show that you're passionate about helping people. Now, that could translate to medicine in saving lives, but it can also translate to many other fields. For example, if you want to help people through pursuing volunteerism and you're interested in those fields, then maybe sociology is your thing. Or if you're interested, say, more in the world, right? So you're more into science and stuff, right? You might want to show that you have a keen interest in, say, clean energy, for example. Then you need to show that you are actually interested by showcasing what you have done. So maybe you did some beach cleanup, projects or whatever you have embarked on in your CCAs related to that field. I think that's important. Now, for myself, my portfolio was simple. My passion was in sports, right? So I didn't really try to go out of my way to go for some interact club or some science and math Olympiad. That was never my thing, right? So what I focused on was showing that I was a passionate individual, right? I'm able to devote my time and my effort into something that I put my mind to. So I try to focus on the aspect of myself because that's what's most true to me, right? So I didn't really, go all the way out to try to go for some external competitions and stuff. It is just purely doing what I would have already done. And on top of that, what I topped it up with was that I showed initiative, I will show action. So I actually took on leadership roles and actually took on an active role in terms of making my CCA and my area of passion a more successful one in any way. So my portfolio was largely on my sports achievement and my leadership roles. Of course, this will differ from individual to individual, right? Let's say if you're in performing arts, you can talk about how your passion is more of like you're in creative expressions, right? You're very good at thinking of choreography. You're maybe participating in Chingye, for example. You're all about the community as well, and you believe art as a form of giving back to the community. I think that's always to construct your portfolio. The possibility is endless. So the only question I think you need to ask yourself is, who are you, right? What are you passionate about? And what is your story? I think having that story will make it very compelling. Just think about it. If two people went for an interview, right, they want to both take medicine and be doctors, right? One student come in and got straight A's, right? And then in the CCA, okay, got participate in CCA, all good, like normal student, right? You won't be memorable at all. The interviewer will just forget, okay, just another straight A student, right? Because there's so many of them. But the second person comes in, they went volunteering, like overseas CIP program, local involvement, you help out at old folks home. Maybe you're in the club where you're doing a lot of volunteering and you're also interested. So you took out like bio or Camp Olympiad. You are going to stand out, right? They're looking at not only that, but they're also looking out for well-rounded individuals. So even if you're in sports and performing arts and you want to apply to medicine, it's fine too. You could do that. You just need to show that, I'm passionate about life. I'm about doing things. I'm about action. I'm about initiative. As long as you have captured those aspects in your portfolio, it will make yours a much more compelling case.
I think it's how you market yourself. Like, doesn't matter what CCA you are in. I think showing like, even if you don't have leadership role, it's not a CCA that like Darrell, like it requires like sports skills and everything. But if you show that, yeah, you are regularly attending the CCA, you are like putting in effort in your CCA, you could also phrase yourself as like, I work hard. I am determined. I am a very consistent person. I put in consistent work. I think it's just how you market yourself. And I think one thing about portfolio is that when you hear portfolio, you think of like stellar records. But I think portfolio is also your own personal story, and not everyone wants to be a leadership, like CCA leader, right? But I think it's about creating your own story, even though there's no CCA, even though it's not a like leadership position, but it could still be like what experience you have other than just studying. Yeah.
It's really what you make out of the experience. In fact, right now, right, people are looking a lot more for team players instead, rather than just leaders. You can't have 10 leaders in the same team, right? You need people that will lead, right? And people that will follow. So I think it's important for you to showcase who you are, all right, and showcase your passion. You do not want to be somebody that only study. I think that's the worst thing. All right.
The last thing, yeah.
Yeah, which brings me to the point on what to avoid if you're thinking of constructing your portfolio, because we talked about what's good, right? So what doesn't help you make a compelling case? I think firstly, if you only have academic results, it will not make for a good portfolio. Having said that, to be very realistic, if you're applying to a local university, there is not a top course, you actually only need your results, right? So I think we had this.
Honest, even to apply to UK university and Australia, you only need your result also. But there are some courses that are super competitive, then it's not enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So it depends on where you're pitching yourself. So results alone would help. But having a solid portfolio is a very good backup too, because if you are caught in a space whereby you need to go for interview to get in, that means you're almost there but not there yet, or you're trying to appeal into some courses and stuff. And of course, if you're heading to a local, you try to aim for the local scholarships because they grant you a lot of benefits. You will definitely need your portfolio. Now, some things to avoid, all right, only showing academic results because everybody else will have the same results as you, so you are not unique at all. Secondly, you only try to talk about your interests without showing any evidence. So you say you're also passionate about the world of bio, but on your portfolio, there's not a single line to show that you have participated in anything closely related to that. Then I think your portfolio is a GG, right? So you need to think about actions and things you actually have done, which is why we say that portfolio building process is a little deliberate, but I think it also is a lot on actions, saying yes to things more than saying no. Okay. I mean, previously, one of our podcasts, we talked about balancing your time, right? You need to learn how to say no, but you cannot be so laid back and do absolutely nothing. And when it comes time to build your portfolio and you realize that, hey, shit, I got nothing to say about myself. I only study. Cannot be, right? You need to showcase. Now, take note, right? It doesn't have to be a school activity. It is an external project you have started. Even if it failed, right? Include it. In fact, those failed projects would show a lot more learning and growth rather than a project that has only succeeded, right? So you want to include all those experiences, be it even like setting up your weekend soccer league or something, or you started a project to redesign your gaming or whatever, like you started a community. I think those are all relevant things to show that you're a passionate individual and you take action. I think those are what the portfolio should encompass, and that should describe you as a person as well. You don't want to be writing things that are fake or things that are actually not truthful, because it's very easy to suss out those facts, especially once you go into interview. Because when you're talking about something that actually has happened versus something that hasn't happened before and you're conjuring it up, trust me, it's going to be very drastically obvious. So please do not lie on when you're making your portfolio. It needs to be real, it needs to be authentic. If you have very little to write, I rather you write only the true stuff, right? I don't want you to write things that did not actually happen. So avoid lying, okay, which should be a thing. Yeah.
I think one thing to avoid is to I don't want to phrase it. I don't want to come across wrongly, but I think since we're talking about what to avoid, I think Darrell already listed out a lot of good points. But I think one thing is to not do anything during your school and JC time, like during your secondary school and JC time, and then eventually when you have to write something, you realize that, oh, I have nothing to write. And when you have to write about your interests, you have nothing to write as well. I think this is more abstract wise, more during school time is really your time to go and find things that you it doesn't have to be I don't think it has to be your passion. It can be something that you're interested to just try. And it's good to just take part in maybe a 1 week program or something during holiday, and you go and just meet people, talk about things and learn about things. And I think that's great, right? I think that is good enough. It's maybe it could be a starting point. Maybe from a try only, it became wow, this is so interesting. I want to explore more in this area. Then suddenly you have a path to go down to. But if you don't try, you don't never know, right? So I think this is to address to people who maybe they will ask, I'm just imagining, maybe people will ask what if I have just no interest and no passion also? Then go and find, go and just try everything. And if you don't hate this thing, then you can go deep, advance more until maybe you really fall in love or you realize that it's not for you. Then you go and try another path. Yeah, I think this is the time to really try.
Yeah, I think that's very relevant and to make it a bit more contrarian, right? Because the episode here is how to build your portfolio. I think another way to look at it is rather than building your portfolio is simply a reflection of what you have done. I think that's another way to think about it. So rather than approaching it with, okay, I need to do this, right? You should go and try to do whatever you want to do and then put it together to showcase your story and who you are as a human. I think that's the much healthier way to do it. So in fact, you can be building your portfolio subconsciously, but you just need to know that you have to take action, right? The world does not reward inaction. So do something, whether it fail, succeed, does work, doesn't work, doesn't matter. Yeah, no, just do something. I think the initiative part is more important. Actually, when you go down for interviews and stuff, right, they don't really care about your achievements. So one thing to avoid is spamming purely achievements, because you can have a lot of achievements, but it tells nothing about the person, right? So maybe this person, you get straight A's, every single achievement you want is there. But when it goes down for the interview, he only talks about his achievements, right? This person won't leave much of a reflection, because cool, your reflection is all of what you have achieved. Cool, yeah, but I don't know who you are, right? A lot of times, what they're looking for is your story. What is your purpose, right? Because purpose driven, I think that is what truly compels true change, right? So they're actually looking for individuals that can talk a lot about why they are doing this, what is their backstory, who they are, and that creates a more long-lasting impact than just a generic candidate with straight A's, because those we know they exist, and quite a lot of them, in fact. You want to differentiate yourself by talking about you as a person. I think leaving an impression a lot of times is the key point in terms of making it out of the interview and knowing you did a good job. Okay, now moving on to a more practical point on when can you start paying attention to more of this portfolio stuff. I think one good time to really consider it is during your school holidays, when you are now removed from having to very stressfully focus on your academics. Now you actually have a little bit of breather time to go and explore your interests, and to also use that time to go and participate in projects or start new stuff. I think that would be a good time to do so. Another time is that when the school opens up for competitions and stuff, you really want to consider whether you want to actually take part in it. Now, of course, you might have an initial barrier thinking that you might not be good enough, or you're not, say, 100% invested into it, or you might think the time taken might not be worth it. Then my advice to you would be to go and try a few first, right? To go and give yourself that chance to explore. Whether it ends up on your portfolio or not, it doesn't matter, because that experience itself would be for you to grow and for you to become gain more perspective. I think that's really most important, right? Okay. And if you're ever given a chance to take on leadership positions, I think give it a strong consideration. Don't be lazy. Like, don't be just like, I don't want the trouble, please. Somebody else can go and handle it. Because I personally, for me taking up leadership roles, I realized that it has helped me up a lot in terms of learning how to maybe speak up, right? Learning how to communicate, learning how to assume responsibility and to delegate responsibility. I think those are all areas you might not completely get if you are purely a follower. So you might not have to take on the highest role of like head of council or anything, but maybe an exco or head of your committee might be good. I think those are all situations where you have to learn to step up to the task. So I think being overly laid back, there's a detriment to that too. Try to find a balance, right? Always try to put yourself in an area where you're uncomfortable, because that's actually where you'll grow the most. And that's something that has served me very well. And even till today, I'm trying to constantly push myself. I don't want to be overly comfortable at where I am. Okay. Now I think focusing on maybe some of the dilemma part of what you might be thinking. So Xin Wei, the question that I want to throw to you this week is, if you can only choose between studying and building your portfolio, which one is more important?
I think this is by far, like all the podcasts that I did with Darrell, the hardest dilemma question, because it's like I still can't really choose. Like, even if I'm gonna answer now, I'm still not very satisfied with my answer. But I would say is study, because study because it is like the baseline. Like your grades, right? Do form the baseline. So if you have a stellar portfolio, but if your grades don't make it, there's a very high chance that you don't even get into the interview stage to show off your portfolio. I think the ideal situation, of course, is you have like good grades and you also have a very exciting portfolio that you truly love, like that reflects your exciting school life outside of academics, right? But let's say if you really only can choose, let's say your result is not very good right now, and your portfolio also nothing much. I think it can be a very realistic situation in this case, right? You have to pick one because time is limited, effort is limited. Then you go and build up your grades first, because in actual fact, like what Darrell has mentioned, if your grades are good enough, you can get into like the JC, and you also can advance to uni. You can. But if your grades cannot even bring you to like the poly that you want, the JC that you want, then there's no way. And if in your A level, you didn't do well for A level, there is also a chance where you can't get into uni. Or let's say if you are aiming for a local uni, then maybe also very difficult. Yeah. So the truth is that the baseline is your grades. Yeah.
I have to sadly agree. My perspective here is that I really don't like this take. Okay, like I personally I'm against it, like my own personal belief. But it's unfortunate that the system is structured that way, right? So I always talked about how the education system is how it is, right? There isn't much we could do to change it because it comes from a much higher level at the ministry level on what they feel is the most important. And there is a certain rationale here. So rather than trying to argue out against the system, talking about, see, I am such a well-rounded student, it's just that my academics weren't that good, right? I think another way you can look at it is by doing well in your academics, it actually showcases some of your character, right? Which includes discipline, it includes effort and consistency. These are all things that the grades do reflect, right? Whether you like the subject or not, if you put in the work and the time, you can still do well. So that is what I told myself, that, okay, I know that my grades are not a representation of myself in any way, right? They are just merely a grade. But at least my grade shows that I'm a person capable of putting in hard work, a person that is capable of putting in consistent and to, be very proactive about my learning, and it'll reflect in the results that I get. Thereafter, I then know that I at least have gotten that base level done, like what Xin Wei has mentioned, to get to the next step that I want to. Then I focus a lot more on my external learning, because to me, it's like a game, right? If I know that I have to pass this stage to move to the next stage, and this is the only way to win the game, I will win the game, right? Then when I pass and I move on to the next stage, then I can do whatever I want then, right? So I try to level up first, and I keep it as a consistent reminder that, yes, my grades is not a representation of myself, but I kind of still need it to pass in this game, right? If you go overseas for education, you'll see that the approach is very different. It's more holistic, it's more well-rounded. Your portfolio actually matters a lot, just as much as your results. It's a little unfortunate in Singapore's case because of how it's currently structured is this way. But don't blame the system, don't blame the world. Instead, focus on your own effort, right? So you can still build a stellar academic track and still pursue your portfolio, your passions, and your developments at the same time. There's nobody stopping you for it, okay? So there's one thing I want you to take away, right? Especially if you are like me as a student, the kind that don't like to study, but quite good at doing everything else, right? Don't hate the system. Because even no matter how much blame you throw at it, and it's like, wow, why must it be like that? Why cannot I go university? Why cannot go this poly course? Instead, I want you to reflect on what you could have done or what you should do, because that is the only thing that would realistically change. Nobody is going to be listening to your sob story on why you didn't make it to the course you wanted. Nobody cares. In the grand scheme of things, that's insignificant. Okay, but that choice alone is life-changing for you. And if it's life-changing, you should put in the effort and the time to make it happen, because that is what you want. Work for it. Okay, and of course the game is structured in a certain way. There's rules, you follow the rules. Okay, of course you can find ways around the rules, that's great, right? But if the rules are fixed, there's no way around it. So real story for myself, I always shared, I wasn't a hard worker. I always study smart, right? Because I know where I wanted to go. So when I got my A-level grades, it was perfect. I exactly hit what I needed to get into that course, and I got into it. And I tell you, there wasn't a moment of regret that I spent mugging so hard to make sure that I got to this point that I wanted to get to. And there are a lot of friends that I met that did not get into the course they wanted, and they ended up in a course that they didn't like, or they ended up in a JC that was not ideal for them. Then I think that just breaks it apart, I mean, because you're working towards the next progression. I feel like I'm rambling a little, but I hope what I'm saying here makes sense to you, right? So for me, it's always academics first, purely because that's the rules of the game. But if you know me and you've been listening to the podcast, I'm an advocate of holistic education. I believe you learn a lot more from the beyond the books, in your CCA and your passion, in the projects you take part in. So learn to play the game right and don't blame anybody, but just focus on your own actions. Xin Wei, anything else to add?
I think study. I don't want to talk about much about study because I just gonna take it as like, I think people who have listened also know that I just take it as like, that's your responsibility. I'm just gonna take it as you are already working on that. But if you are focusing on portfolio, especially if someone, I always say like passion and enthusiasm, like having passion, right, is a blessing and a curse. Because blessing, right, is like you know what you want to focus on, like you know what you want to do, you know what course you want to take. But it's a curse because like if you don't get that, then you'll be very sad, right? So but if let's say you are that person who has a really, like you already know what you want to do, then I think to me it's still more of a blessing. So go and like there are those courses where okay, local very hard, local is impossible, no grades, no talk. But there are other places where if you have a set up portfolio and you have like you are very strong in certain skills, let's say drawing or like coding, this kind, right? Actually, you still can bypass a bit the grades part. But the thing is you need to go overseas lah, because Singapore is really like what Darrell say, the rule is that you show me your grades first. Anything else, right, we talk about it later. Yeah. So in this case, if someone hear this dilemma and feel really sad because we both chose study, right, I just want to say there is of course benefit of chasing your portfolio. And in this case, like building your passion, like you already have this skill, you're amazing at it, right? Then of course, like you can spend time on that. Of course, your study, you also need to spend some time. But right now, let's say you don't have grades, you don't have a very like super strong skill, like let's say world champion, let's say you are representing Singapore in certain sports, then of course you can spend a bit more time, but because you are already doing so well compared to everyone else, you are like literally top in Singapore. But if you like, let's say like normal students, right, you don't have this kind of world class skill, your grades struggling. That's why we are advising you, go and study. Yeah.
Okay, but I just wanted to give a glimmer of hope for people out there that I think fall into the category of what Xin Wei say, extremely talented and ultra passionate, is that the truth is that the traditional education path might not be even what you should be looking at anymore. Let's say you are like super into, let's say throw it out of the window, tattoo artist. You want to be a tattoo artist and you're like really good at your designs and stuff. You could just go pursue that. You don't even need to go to uni. Or let's say you're extremely into coding and you already learn everything from YouTube and stuff, right? You don't even need to go to a coding course, right? You already know your shit. Life will work out for you. You already know what you're going to do and you're good at it. So actually, taking this traditional path is from people who are a little more undecided on what they want to do, or are not yet having discovered where their special skill set lie. So going through this generic education system help funnels you towards those areas. And the truth is, most of the time, what you study will not be what you do in reality, right? I didn't study to be a tutor, right? But here I am as a tutor, right? So that's the truth of it. Rather, what you're studying is just maybe what you're interested in. That would be great. But even you're studying not what you're interested in, you should still pursue your side passion. In fact, that side passion usually amounts to a lot more than your traditional educational path. So don't give up on your passion. But like what Xin Wei said, always understand that your main role as a student is to learn, all right, and to take care of your academics. Because once you get that taken care of, maybe you don't have to aim to get your straight A's, right? Because you're not planning to go to medicine or law, right? You just need to do good enough to get you to the next step. And then in the meantime, you can use your other time to dedicate it to your passion areas and stuff. And very naturally, your portfolio will build up in that sense to showcase who you are as a person. Okay, so I hope today's episode was informative in terms of guiding you on how to build your portfolio the right way, and also in terms of planning ahead and thinking what would eventually go inside and how you can start pursuing them in advance. If you're watching this on YouTube, please leave us a like, even leave us a comment on what you would like us to discuss next. We'll be more than happy to talk about those topics. And with that, we come to the end of the podcast. Goodbye, everyone, and see you in the next episode.
Bye.
It sound right, boy.